me fix my hair. What up, guys? Press Performance Practices Unit Portfolio 155127. I'm doing the dishes again. Good time to vlog. Good time to reflect when I'm doing the dishes. I feel like I get some of my best thinking done when I'm doing the dishes. I think that's the shower for some people, but it's doing the dishes for me. So, I have my tutorial with Experience tomorrow. I'm trying to get the water temperature right. I have my tutorial with Experience tomorrow. And so today, I'm going over my notes. That means both my journal entries that I would keep most days. I wasn't great about writing every day, and there was like a 1.5 week period where I didn't write at all. But I was looking through my journal and my notes that I took during class, and I was trying to kind of identify some salient characteristics or turning points in my practice. I don't know if she, I mean, you know, the briefing paper for the, God damn, this water's hot. The briefing paper for the unit portfolio talks about how we should identify how our practice engaged with something, topics, and performance, but that's kind of weird for me because I feel like I wasn't really focusing on my practice this term. I mean, I was focusing on working together with other people, but, you know, when they would ask us every day, you know, what is your practice? And I would be like, oh, I'm interested in, you know, the questions surrounding, like, you know, bartending and DJing and what that means and, you know, that kind of stuff. I wasn't working on, I was specifically told, in fact, not to work on that and to save it for, you know, developing your discipline. But everything's a practice, so, you know, how has what I was doing this term dealt with problems in performance or not interesting, but salient, whatever, something, topics, and performance. And I guess at first I was conceiving of this artifact and portfolio and executive summary as talking about how I've grown, but I don't think that's necessarily the right focus to have. Or I think that instead I should be really focusing on how I was engaging with performance and what I've learned about performance, or what things I've engaged with in performance. And it talks about looking at the projects, the group projects that we did, and so maybe that's a good place to start. And I was looking over my notes today, and I feel like I got clearer each time with what practice as research is. I feel like with the first group project, we were trying to sort of be clever and focus on what was going on in the room and being a little bit self-reflexive and talking about what the dynamic between the three of us was like. And we hit on that, or we touched on it, but we didn't slam dunk it in like we should have, because we were a little bit more concerned with A, being flashy and clever and self-reflexive, and B, trying to make sure that we got a ton of random-ass research in, which was not a good thing to focus on. We were going to the buffet. We were definitely going to the buffet. By all means, we were going to the buffet. And so that was a little bit weird. And then the second group that I was in with Berit and Jenny, I feel like there wasn't too much going to the buffet, but we weren't clearly defining what we were looking at. Like, we said we were looking at agency, but we didn't really look into agency. We looked into semiotics with relation to music and everyday life, which was great, and we did a really good job of looking at semiotics and music and everyday life. And we also did a really good job of looking at personal soundscape and who talks about that and what they say and what some gaps in that are. We did a good job of acknowledging those things, but what we were doing in the room that day, A, was not super clearly defined, and B, didn't very clearly relate to the topics that we were interested in, insofar as a bunch of other really interesting things happened in the room that we weren't planning on and didn't really know how to talk about or engage with, I think. So that was that one. Now the third time around, this is what was really interesting for me, is that when I was working with, Michael, and I feel like I'm burping in every single fucking vlog entry that I do. I feel like I'm burping non-stop when I do these. In the third group with Michael and Clara, for a long time, I felt like we were totally lost and out of focus and didn't really know what we were doing, and not really focusing on intermediality and all of that. But what I think I didn't really give a ton of weight to at the time is that we were being very, very clear with what we were doing. We were being very well defined. We were like, this is what we're looking at, this is how we're going to portray it, this is why we're not going to perform it in front of you, blah, 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 blah. And we were very clear about what we were tackling and what we weren't tackling. And I think it really helped a lot. And we were told that when we were told that we would have gotten the grade that was 70 something good. Is that, I don't know what distinction is. I feel like that's distinction. I feel like we were there, but we were doing a really good job. And so I feel like I spent a lot of time this term in those group projects just trying to nail down what PPR is and how to present it. And I do feel like by the end of the term with that third one, I had a good idea about what was going on and how we can be better at doing what PPR is, and really just how to present PPR, because I feel like there wasn't a ton of focus on what are we doing when we're together in the studio and that kind of stuff. But I feel like we nailed the last one, the last presentation or group project or whatever. And I feel like it was because we were really clear about what we were tackling and what we weren't tackling. We weren't going to the buffet. We were only taking out as much. We were only reading as much as was necessary per our practice, and we were really clear about the terms we were using. And I think that's been a huge thing for me, is the words thing. I mean, oh god, it fucking never ends. I get soap on my shirt every goddamn time, and my pants. But I feel like the credence, or the importance that is given to every single word in every single fucking sentence that you say, it seems, in this practices research kind of stuff, is really important. And that's been big for me to learn and big for me to engage with. Because I mean, that when I came up with fucking content, we're like 20 minutes before our presentation, I was like, no. We don't call them responses, we don't call them things, we don't call them pieces, we don't call them performances, we call it content. And then had a bunch of reasons why we call it content. That weren't just we didn't have another better word, although that was clever for somebody, I think, experienced to say at the time. But yeah, so, and just kind of seeing all those times that somebody in PPR would try to talk about their inquiry or their practice or whatever, and then, usually experienced, but other people too, would just be like, oh, well, what does that word mean? Like, oh, well, is it this word, is it this word, is it this word? And so that taught me to really be careful with every word that I'm using. And I feel like that happened in the first two groups, but it didn't go beyond saying, this is a really important word, and we're not using it correctly, and we need a better word. But I feel like in the third one was when I finally started to actually look at that and actually try to fit different words into that space and try to figure out what word was really important. And content was a good example of me doing that. I think that's most of what I very roughly learned in those groups. There were a couple other sort of interesting things that I learned about myself and how I work and how I mediate, how I work with other people, blah, blah, blah. That's kind of interesting. I had a really good experience working with Jenny and Berit and working with sound, and sometimes stepping back into that role of like a teacher of sound or a teacher of electroacoustic things, or a teacher of listening, and that was really nice and really special. And sometimes just looking at how I talk about listening and sound in a way as to not make it a really, elitist, jargon-filled party. So that was good stuff. But anyway, just all good stuff. It was all good stuff about the groups, and I'm trying to kind of nail down what some of that was so that the tutorial tomorrow isn't a entire shit show. I might do some push-ups beforehand. I might listen to the theme from Chariots of Fire or the theme from Rocky to try to get a little bit more in the zone, but we'll see how it goes. I'm about to finish up doing these dishes, and I'll probably try to write down some of the stuff that I just said, and I'm probably going to go to Satan's Whiskers and have one cocktail, because I haven't done that in a little while. Have I? No, I don't think I've done that in a little while. In the backwater, run through the woods. Does it ever feel like no matter how much food you get out of the drain, it's just not going to unclog? Run through the woods. I feel like I can fit this. I can fit this one on top of the rest of the pile probably. I feel like I can. Let's see. Run through the woods, in the backwaters. You look like a rose, especially in the backwaters and through the woods. Two steps back, and I'm gone. You know, there was a kid I went to elementary school with, Rick Best. Rick Best and I were in, like, first grade through high school together. And he was always, everybody knew he was the smartest kid in the class. Everybody knew he was the smartest kid that any of us had ever seen. And I don't mean to toot my own horn, I really don't. But it was always Rick was the smartest, and then I was the second smartest. That's just the way it was from, like, you know, first grade through middle school. And I think that right around maybe the middle of high school, I stopped caring if I was the smartest kid. But I mean, Rick and I used to be like brutal about this kind of stuff. We used to, like, you know, be really competitive with each other about who was getting better grades, and everybody knew what grades we were getting. And, you know, it was always a race between, or not a race, but it was always a contest between me and Rick to see who was the smartest kid. Also, this motherfucker wore yellow everything every day. You literally yellow everything every day. Yellow shirt, yellow pants, yellow socks, yellow shoes, yellow backpack. Ruined the color for me. Truly did. As my rival exclusively wear it. But so, it was always a battle between me and Rick to see who was the smartest kid in the class. It was often Rick, and I always came in second. But then I think around the middle of high school, I stopped caring and stopped always trying to be such an incredible student. In some ways. I stopped caring about letter grades in everything except music and started really devoting my time to music. But even in music, I mean, definitely in music, I was very concerned with being the best. I was the second best drummer in our high school until Ethan Kogan left, and then I was the best drummer in our high school. And I was in all the music classes and was section leader of all the percussion sections and everything. Then still, when I went to Oberlin, I was really concerned with who's the best in the class, blah, 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 and it had to be me and everything, and I had to get an A, and, I had to get good grades and all that. But then I think now, I feel like I'm starting to not care as much. I'm trying really hard to not care as much. And I think that's where a lot of my, performed character in this course has been. Because, I mean, I did, all of that, I don't want to read books. That shit that I've pulled in, Experience's office and that kind of stuff, that's all a game. I love reading books. And I like doing research. And I like working. But I'm trying really hard to kind of put on a persona of somebody who doesn't, or somebody who doesn't care, somebody who doesn't care about grades. And it's been interesting to try that. I think I've learned things from it, but I don't think I've really sat down and tried to figure out what that is. I can watch one more thing. Can I? No, I don't want to do a whole balancing game and ruin it. Anyway, that's it for now, guys. I'm sure I'll check in with you again soon. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tell your friends.